Oh, here we go. Come on in. Welcome, everyone. We want to get started. Thank you for being here. My name is Maurice Stinnett. I'm the Vice President of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement here at Cleveland State University. And I want to officially welcome you to our community forum where we want to hear from you. And so just want to outline what we're doing, kind of give some people a backdrop. You know what happened last semester when we had that awful event take place on our campus. Caused a lot of disturbance and distress, and rightfully so. And we responded to it, and as a part of our commitment, our ongoing follow-up commitment, we promised that we would sit down with our community members to listen to you. We would share with you what we have done as far as policies and procedures are concerned, what we've put in place, what are actually have already been revised and implemented and are already put in place. And so we'll just do a quick overview of that. We'll have my colleagues come up and share different areas of the policies, et cetera. And then we will spend the lion's share of the time listening to you all. We want to hear from you about different programs, your ideas of programs that we could bring to this campus community to make it more diverse and inclusive and welcoming to everyone. So again, I want to make sure I highlight that and underscore that again. We're listening to you because we really want to hear your ideas on programs, partnerships, who we should engage with out in the community nationally, what you think we should do programmatically, training, et cetera, to make this community stronger. So it's just a brief overview of the policies and procedures that are in place. They are also posted online. I think he passed out some copies. We have some copies if you're not familiar with them in the back of the room, I think on the table back there, but they're posted online and they've been posted for quite some time. So without further ado, we're going to get this started. I'd like to bring up here Vice President of Student Affairs is Dr. Yarbrough, who will bring his portion of the program.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I appreciate folks coming out for a part of the conversation. I know many of you, but I don't know all of you. So for those I have not met, it is a pleasure for you to join us in the conversation. And this is an ongoing dialogue, as Dr. Stinnett already indicated. One of the things that gives me particular pride is the Viking Creed. So I want to spend just a few moments talking about this. This is something that we had started before this situation blew up last term. And I had asked our team, Jamie Johnston was here at the time, to spearhead an effort involving students, faculty, and staff to revisit our Viking Creed. The creed that we had previously was exactly what you would expect if something were written by a university committee. So it was a long, rambling paragraph, and if you had read it out loud and asked me to tell you what it means, I would have fumbled trying to explain what that meant. And having been at a number of other institutions and seen similar documents that they had come up with, I tasked our group to come up with something that really hits at the core about what it means to be a member of the Viking community. And this is the end result. And I'm really, really proud of this. So the copies on the table, they're smaller versions that you can take with you if you have not seen this already. I really think it sets the stage for this conversation. When you look at things like practicing personal and academic integrity, acting with civility and treating all people fairly, embracing inclusion and diversity, respecting individuals' freedom of opinion and expression, and making a positive impact on campus and in my community, those elements, every single one of them, are at the core of what we're here to talk about today. So I'm proud that we had already started this. I'm proud that we officially launched it about 3 weeks ago down in the atrium of the University Center. And I'm happy that we're having this kind of as a guiding principle for the conversations and the work we do moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Stinnett, and quickly we'll engage in conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Yarbrough. So as you see, some of this work was already taking place. Maybe you weren't aware of it, and that's a good sign for me and the institution. We were already working behind the scenes on a lot of this. And that's the same for the policies and procedures. These policies and procedures were under review before we even engaged in this work, and so I want to make sure I acknowledge that. But it gave us an opportunity to strengthen that work, right, and to put some more voices and people around the table to look at it. So let me talk about the first one that I'm going to kind of spearhead. Have you had an opportunity to look at the bias incident response team? Did you look at that online? Did anybody check that out before you came here? Okay, that's all right. So again, copies are in the back, but the bias incident response team, also known as BERT, right? I found out now who created this, and I want to make sure I properly acknowledge that. I used to give credit to the wrong person, but Ms. King, Rachel, she put this together. She works in the General Counsel's office and was working on this before I think this incident had already taken place. But nevertheless, it all came to fruition at that time. And so the bias, we did not, as you know, how we responded to the event. We didn't have a system in place, the communication, who would be around the table to respond, how we would respond. Was there a centralized location? Who were the players that needed to be notified immediately? Did we ensure that the campus community felt safe, heard, understood, right? We fumbled there. We didn't have this in place. And this was a critical piece that we needed to put in place, and now it is in place. You have people who are on the BERT response, the BERT team. It's student affairs representation. You have representation from facilities, police, marketing, the Office of General Counsel, the Office of Institutional Equity, the Counseling Center, and Human Resources. Why? Why did we feel the need to have this many people? Because again, we wanted various voices informing us to make sure that we were responding in the most appropriate way when anything like this happens on our campus again, right? And so also, we wanted you to be able to reach out to a centralized location, right? BERT. Now again, contacting BERT, you can go to any of our websites, Student Affairs, you can go to my website, Division of Diversity, I believe it's on the Office of General Counsel's office as well, OIE's office. You can find it on the website. You can submit your concern right there, and it activates this team to get involved and to see what we need to do, right? And again, that was a critical piece that was missing in last semester's situation. And now we have that, and the experts will be around the table, ensuring that we have the diverse perspective and voice at the table so that we can respond as adequately as possible. Are there any questions about BERT or why we created it? This is an easy crowd. I appreciate that. So again, that's fantastic. So we're going to move on because, like I said, the lion's share of this meeting is us listening to you all. The second part is going to be our expressive activity procedures and policy. And my colleagues, whoever they decide, is going to present on that.
Thank you. My name is Rachel King. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer here at CSU, and I'm going to talk about the fairly boring expressive activity procedures. So a couple of years ago, the board passed a policy for expressive activity that essentially said the goal is to balance people's First Amendment rights with maintaining a safe campus. This year, we developed procedures around that, which I would refer to as kind of our time, place, and manner procedures. So they talk about what size your sign can be, don't park on the grass, don't stick anything in the grass, you know, your sound is capped at 80 decibels, that kind of thing. Excuse me. They also talk a little bit about bulletin boards, which is also reflected in our conference services update, which I think Boyd is going to give in a minute. And generally speaking, the university takes the position that every bulletin board on campus is owned by a department or an office, including conference services, which has about 30 bulletin boards. So in general, if a department is using a bulletin board just to put out its own messages, there's no further requirements to it. But if they're going to take flyers from individuals outside of just their department, then we have suggested rules for them to follow. And essentially the rules that Conference Services has adopted and that we recommend to others is people have to bring their flyers to you in person, they have to have contact information on those flyers, and the flyers have to be about a university activity or event. And with those safeguards, we think we will avoid the kind of flyer that led to the situation we had last semester.
Rachel, if I may add just a little bit to that. Prior to this incident, there were a number of bulletin boards across campus that were kind of public posting bulletin boards. And we no longer have any bulletin boards that fit that criteria. So literally now, every bulletin board has an owner, if you will, either a department or conference services. And depending on which one it is, they own responsibility for the content that are on those boards. And an important part of that is on a daily basis, both the facilities team, the FAST team, and conferences services team will be looking to make sure that only things that have been approved are posted on those bulletin boards. So if I went today and said, you know, my used car is for sale, and I put it up on somebody's bulletin board, it should come down immediately, right? Or as soon as one of those members see that, because it hasn't been approved as an official university sanctioned event. Make sense?
I have a question about the indoor procedures. Sorry if I speak too loud, my ears plugged up.
Hang on just a second. We're going to actually give you a mic to make sure that everybody can hear this because we're recording as well.
I'm just wondering about the distribution of flyers or other materials indoors, like for instance, if there's an event in the main classroom auditorium, which we had that last fall, somebody wanted to distribute something indoors, there doesn't seem to be much on that here.
So generally, indoor spaces are not available for what we would call expressive activity. So I don't, I'm not sure exactly where it falls if somebody from the outside wants to distribute things inside. I think it would depend on whether they're actually disrupting any activity. But in general, expressive activity occurs outside of university buildings.
There perhaps is another element to your question because periodically I see little cards that someone puts up saying, this thing is happening in the main classroom tonight, something like that. Or this event is happening in the music building tonight. Those are not approved, and those are not allowed. So when those are seen by members of the FAST team, members of conference services, and others, they're taken up. I personally pick them up every time I walk by. And so that might have been part of your question as well?
Well, I guess my concern would be that some of these events are public events. We are inviting the public, the general public, to say the main classroom auditorium or the Levin Forum or any of these kinds of things. To then say that members of the public whom we've invited to the event couldn't hand out a flyer at the event, that seems to me to be seriously problematic. I now, let's say, I would oppose us being able to hand out flyers for, some fast food joint on campus. But if what's being distributed is relevant to, our Viking Creed or whatever. But that, of course, then that brings up the question of who decides. Do we ask our police officers to examine the material and decide? So I think this is an area that we might want to give a little bit more thought for. And this is not a hypothetical issue. These issues have arisen.
So if it's a university event and the university entity sponsoring the event invites somebody to come and hand out things, like I'm thinking for an example, we do sexual violence prevention activities and Cleveland Rape Crisis Center comes and we invite Cleveland Rape Crisis Center to distribute their literature to the people who come. That's a university event and that's taking place in the context of a university event. There's nothing about this has anything to do with that. As a university, we can make judgments about what we want to say and invite people who are going to send that message. Nothing in here would prevent that at all.
But one of the things we're going to move into in just a moment is getting your suggestions and feedback about other steps we need to take to make our campus a safe and inviting campus. And if that's one of the suggestions, we'll have opportunity to make that. We'll have an opportunity for the group to literally vote on their top priorities, and that'll be part of the conversation in just a moment. So I'll ask you to hold that thought for just a moment, and that may very well emerge as one of the suggestions that comes from the group.
Can I hear you talk more about expressive activities and what goes on stages? I heard you say what goes on a stage inside a university building somewhere is not an expressive activity?
So the expressive activity policy and procedures applies to essentially demonstrations, right? So in general, members of the public can demonstrate out in the public spaces outside of university buildings. In general, protests and other demonstrations are not permitted inside university buildings. That's what the policy that's what the procedures certainly say, and I think that's what the policy says as well.
So when we had the 4-to-3 conversion, a bunch of students got together in the main classroom here, and there was some angry students, and they were clearly expressing themselves. That was very clear expressive activity. Is that forbidden?
So generally speaking, protests are not permitted inside of buildings, yes. Now, what will occur? I think it depends on the circumstances, but generally speaking, it's considered disruptive to have protests inside university buildings. And this is what it says, is that indoor spaces are generally not available.
So again, that may invite a suggestion or recommendation about further action or steps that the university may want to explore. So it's a legitimate question to ask. Other questions about expressive activity, or we'll turn it over to Rachel? We'll just turn it over to Rachel. She'll
Okay,
run it.
good. So I'm Rachel Lettner. I'm the director of the Office for Institutional Equity, which is the office on campus that deals with discrimination, harassment, sexual violence, and retaliation. And the university has a policy against discrimination, harassment, and sexual violence and retaliation, and that prohibits discrimination on all kinds of bases, on both prohibited under state and federal law. We take the broadest possible view on this campus for prohibiting discrimination. So some of the flyers and stuff that happened last semester, those things might violate the policy against our policies against non-discrimination and harassment. And when that happens, or a student or employee of the university or a guest of the university is feeling that they're dealing with discrimination or harassment, they can come to OIE. We do a lot of informal problem solving. We take complaints and we do investigations. Sometimes if something's serious enough and we don't have a person who wants to make a complaint, we can issue a university complaint so that we can address the issue. For people who are dealing with the effects of discrimination or harassment, we can issue all kinds of accommodations. For example, if something has happened that has triggered anxiety or stress relating to prior discrimination or harassment, OIE can assist with academic accommodations. We can get excused absences or extended deadlines or all kinds of other things that might help somebody get past a situation where they were facing discrimination and harassment. So that's it for right now. Any questions?
So I think that we're going to transition to conference services, and I think Dr. Yarbrough, you're going to speak to conference services and the updates on that.
Yeah, I think pretty much covered everything right now, but happy to answer any questions. If you have questions about the role that conference services plays, the bulletin boards, the role that the FAST team does in terms of helping us kind of keep track of all of that. Any questions at all from the group? I was a little bit premature in jumping ahead on that. Yes.
I'm Patricia Carter, and I basically am president of Upsilon Delta Mu, which is a multicultural fraternity. I was basically doing voter registration under the League of Women Voters of Greater Cleveland this fall, and on the outside in front of all of the waterworks, there was a demonstration there at that particular time. And I believe it was, I can't remember, but I remember taking a picture of it on my phone. So was that permissible?
When you say waterworks, I'm not sure what you're referring to.
The
Out in
the fountain out
right.
there in between the library and the student center.
Sure.
Right.
Gotcha.
There was a demonstration out there at that time,
Mhm.
and I took a picture of it, but it wasn't violent or anything of that nature. They were just standing there.
Sure.
So would that be permitted?
That's a fantastic question, and I'll respond to that, and Rachel may have things she wants to correct me on when I misspeak. Generally speaking, Cleveland State takes a position as a public institution that all voices are welcome, okay? And by that we mean that you have every right to, you as an individual have every right to stand in front of the waterworks and say what you want to say, as long as it doesn't disrupt the normal educational function of the university. That's what we mean by decibels. You can't you can't amplify your voice so it's so loud we hear it inside. You can't be physically blocking the pathway. So that, the location you just mentioned is really become the venue of choice for students who want to express their opinion or express their opinion, or non-students. So it's not just limited to students. Community members, national Official protesters can come here and use our space for those things as long as they abide by our policies. Excellent question. So thank you for clarifying that. Rachel, anything you'd add to that? Okay, yes.
Just full of questions today. For 5 years, I organized an event here on campus called the Cuyahoga County Conference on Social Welfare. These next 5 years, it's that case. And we benefited from a conference use policy. It's called the partnership policy, which allowed discounted rates of various kinds, depending on whether it was sponsored by us or by a combination of it, or whether it was a purely private entity. There was a sort of a halfway line. In a college meeting, I think last fall, we heard a report on the changed policies. And I want to say I have full confidence in Rodolfo and his leadership of conference services. He's great. But on the face of it, it doesn't appear to be consistent with the intent of us to try to have events on campus in partnership with off-campus groups without having to worry about paying the outside rate. And I was sort of told at the college meeting, don't worry, Mike, everything's going to be okay. It might even work out better this way, but I could see no reason to believe why that would be the case. So maybe somebody has an idea as to how these changed policies will still make things easy for us to organize events with off-campus groups.
Sure. So I will briefly address that, and I'm mostly going to deflect, but I'll be happy to have as much conversation as you'd like after this meeting. So let me briefly address it and then tell you why I'm deflecting, because that's really not why we're here today. But I do want to draw to your attention that our policies have been rewritten in an attempt to make it easier for students, faculty, and staff to plan and organize events. And prior to our restructuring, we had 3 price rates. We had internal rates, we had external rates, and we had this gray thing in between, the partner rates that you just referred to. That was confusing to some and abused by a number of folks. And so now we have two rates. So that's the simple answer to your question. But we still invite events that are sponsored, promoted, coordinated by students, faculty, and staff as our events. Absolutely. So if student government wanted to have a speaker come in and do this thing or speak about something, that would be welcome. If that speaker contacted the university and said, I want to come to your campus and do my thing, that's considered an outside group. Okay? So it depends on whose group it is that really drives the conversation. But happy to talk as much as you like to offline about that.
Okay, so we're going to transition now, and I'd like to have Bill and Aisha come up. We've got Bill Bowen, who is, Dr. Bill is the president of the Faculty Senate, and we have our wonderful SGA president for student government. And so we're going to have them come up, and again, this is an opportunity for them to kind of co-facilitate this session where we're listening to you all. We want to hear from you. Tell us what we could do, some ideas that you have in your mind, some partnerships we could develop, some programming that may need to take place on the campus for the faculty, staff, or students. Just thinking outside of the box. You can be as creative and innovative. We want that. We need that. So this is an opportunity to hear from you on what you think we should be doing, what you have heard about that's happening at other institutions that are making their campuses more welcoming and inclusive. We want to hear all of that from you at this time, okay? So we're going to turn over and we're going to stay focused on that, though. Let me lay that out. Again, I want to stay focused on you providing us with programs and ideas. Sometimes in these sessions, we go back to the policies that have already been established. Those are already established, you know, so now we need to figure out how we're going to move within the framework of what we already have established here at CSU, okay? So I want to, forward movement, momentum going forward with positivity and things that we can do as a campus community to make it more inclusive. So we're all on the same page? Fantastic. All right.
Sounds good. Okay, my name is Aisha, again, for those of you that don't know me, and I think I was looking forward to this forum the most out of anything that we had coming up since October, and that was because since October, I feel like I've heard from people all over the nation about exactly what is going on at CSU, and I was like, okay, that's fine, but what is going on at home? And I really wanted to know what exactly our campus community was feeling since October, because I know this was, more than just an LGBT issue. It concerned all of us. So I want to hear those concerns, and I want to know what you would like to see shaping up at CSU and how we're going to address concerns since October and how we're going to move forward as a community. So that's what I'm looking forward to hearing from the conversation today. So.
Okay, and I've been saying for years that the biggest asset, the biggest positive thing we've got going for ourselves at this university is our diversity. And it comes in many kinds. And when we start throwing stones at each other and calling each other names and saying things that are hateful, when we start expressing that diversity, we're hurting ourselves. And that's what I saw last fall. I mean, it was sickening to me for a number of different reasons. And so when I was asked to come here and help work through the situation and facilitate the discussion, and I thought it was just a great opportunity. So I appreciate being here. And so what we're going to do, right, is we're going to get your ideas for things that can be done that can help protect a diverse campus. And we'll write those down. The two of us will do our best to write them down, and then we'll apparently stick them on the wall over there, and you can vote on which ones are the most important. But it's really up to you to kind of put out there what you think can be done.
Just one more quick thought. This is the third in a series of conversations that we're having just like this, right? So some of you have been here for other versions of this conversation. Some of you, this is the first time. That's all fantastic. So we've gotten suggestions from the other two groups. This is your time to share suggestions. Some of them might be duplicative. That's fine. Some of them might be brand new. But then you'll get a chance to vote on the top three that you prefer. And then we're going to take those collectively to help us make informed decisions about moving forward. So not just feedback from today, but the prior two conversations as well.
Hi, guys. So I guess maybe a good starting point might be student organizations, because they often provide a key point for, I mean, if we're just strictly talking about students here, where a lot of individuals go for social interaction or professional interaction, and seeing, guiding them on leadership with that. I don't know if that's something that can be incorporated within the org sync training for like positions, or going to organizations that maybe specialize in diversity and inclusion within fields. For example, in engineering, there's Society of Women Engineers and National Society of Black Engineers, and I think there's other organizations that sort of specialize not only in diversity in regards to their professions, but maybe that can extend to the campus community as well.
Right. So Alex, do you mean specifically like training in situations, just like regarding discrimination, or just, being inclusive? Or do you feel that like all student org leaders should be getting that training?
I think it's something that can get, I don't know if it should go necessarily in all org like training, but I know it could be, like I know Student Life runs leadership institutes and leadership conference, and I think that could, something that could be integrated within that level of training, and maybe other places as well.
So integrate training into, what would you call it? Integrate training into student
Leadership.
leadership?
Yeah.
Great. Diversity training and inclusion training into student leadership.
Not just diversity inclusion, but like also how to confront situations like this if it does happen. Yeah. Training, yeah.
Training, but I want to get some specific kind of training so that we can know. Integrate. What kind of training are we talking about?
Yeah.
I think he meant just in general. So there are a lot of things in D&I. Maybe we can do specific like modules maybe. So D&I is a little bit general. So an example would be like the bystander effect. So maybe just training them on if you did see something happen, or maybe how do you diffuse a situation. So, if you were walking down and you see someone, being harassed on campus, and you're worried about your safety, or you're worried about doing something because there are other people around. So maybe specific things like bystander training or strategies on how to diffuse certain situations if you were by yourself or if you were just with your friend. Is that what you meant?
That's one of them. The other one I was also thinking about was generally trying to see how you can promote your organization to maybe be more diverse if it is lacking in
I see.
diversity.
Okay. So just promote organizations to, student organizations to be more proactive. Is that what I heard? Okay.
What I think Alex was expressing, engineer has two diverse or two separate entities, one for black engineers and one for women engineers. Same thing with social work. They have right, exactly. So there's a split there. And I think what he's trying to, what he's expressing is that if those two separate entities could basically work together or be trained to work together, even though they're separate entities, is that what you're?
So those organizations in particular are specialized in trying to promote underrepresented people in professions to get into these professions. Maybe those organizations can play a bigger role in terms of diversity on campus and not just within those professions as well.
Right. I think we mean like an area of collaboration, right? So like
Yeah.
we would love to see them work together, but I think it's important to recognize them as their unique individuals as well. Gotcha. Any other thoughts? I know we're touching on student organizations. It's a free-for-all, I guess.
I think we have a great mix of groups in social work, NABSW and the NASW Student Club, which I was the advisor of for 4 or 5 years. They routinely collaborate and support each other, give money to help the other group go to conferences, attend their summer breaks and stuff like that. But I'm thinking to the kind of group that often existed in the community, like the Gay Straight Alliance groups, which were great because they were diverse by intent. And I've always felt, and I was talking with a faculty member just last week at lunch about how whether it might be helpful to purposely set up groups that were purposely new groups that were diverse from the start. So you'd build the organization with diverse pairs as the unit of membership. This might take some doing with that clunky database, but the idea is you would literally join, you'd have a matchmaking pair, and you would start building organizations that were diverse, 2, 4, 6, 8, because see, there's this principle called the homophily principle in sociology. Organizations start diverse, over time they get less and less diverse, and there's this sort of core non-diverse. If you build a group, if we were to build some groups, whether it be the group we were talking about was Jewish-Muslim groups to deal with the problems in the Middle East, or gay-straight, or black-white, or however we did it. Maybe I think we need some male-female discussion going on here. I mean, if you build these groups, or even collectives, purposely using the even number, and have discourse and dialogue, I think we're hungering for it.
So design diversity into organizations and classes?
With each, you'd look at the kind of diversity would be based upon the purpose of the group. So if it's the Gay Straight Alliance, it's because of the purpose of the group. Same with any of these other groups. So the diversity factor would be depending on the mission. But once you go there, you say, we want this diverse, we're going to make it purposely diverse by building the unit of membership to be a diverse pair. Just a thought. So.
Hi, I'm Bruce Menapacci, a psychologist at the Counseling Center. A little while ago, I had occasion to look into what kind of diversity training other universities offered, and I was aware, I think Dr. Stinnett had recently sent something out about diverse from Case Western Reserve. I'm also aware that Kent State University has a whole series of workshops that are available. I think it'd be interesting to have some kind of campus discussions about what kind of basic knowledge would we like our students to have about diversity, maybe from the upfront in terms of something like at orientation, a day-long workshop or something like that, that kind of, dovetails with the Viking Creed and creates expectations and gives people a minimal amount of knowledge. I think we could probably, do some of those things, see what Case has, see what Kent State has, and leverage what we already have. For example, we have folks here that are doing the Safe Space program for LGBT questioning and additional folks. So, kind of integrating that all together where we could have some kind of curriculum and some kind of buy-in up front in terms of, this is something that you need to know about our diverse community as you're coming into it.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's very valuable. And that's something we've also touched on in other roundtables as well. So that's definitely a priority.
Just to change topics a little bit, I'd like to start with a question for anybody who might know the answer, and that is something I was really concerned about last semester when the posters were found and when we were having the conversations about that was the way that it was expressed to me is that even if we were to have figured out who posted those, the homophobic and the racist posters, we didn't have anything in place to actually punish those people. Any rules in place to address that, to signify to these people that this is wrong and there be some form of repercussion, and be that you have to go talk to diversity counselors or it's some kind of a punishment, or I don't really care, but I was wondering if we actually have something in place now that can hold people accountable for posting and saying things like that.
So I'm Rachel Lutner from Office for Institutional Equity, and I think that last semester, if we'd found the people who had put up those posters and they were members of our community, OIE could have conducted an investigation, and it's possible that those posters would have violated our policies against non-discrimination and harassment. And if we had found a violation, I think there would have been options for addressing that type of conduct and stating that it falls beneath our community standards and is contrary to all of the things that we believe here. So we had those things in place last semester, and OIE, we, along with some other offices, we did investigate as much as we could, trying to track down like any potential leads for who put those things up, and we just didn't get anywhere because that information wasn't available.
Okay.
And so maybe the confusion, thank you for clarifying that, and I think maybe the confusion could have been around this, that there was no criminal activity that took place. And as a result of that, and I don't know if that might have been the confusion, that we couldn't do anything as far as the police were concerned because they didn't commit a crime, but as we clearly had a mechanism in place to do something if we did the investigation, et cetera. So.
Yeah, and then as far as actually making a suggestion goes, I think what sparked a lot of the very strong feelings and the strong expression of those feelings last semester wasn't necessarily that the university didn't have policies in place or that people weren't addressing it. I think it was very, very much a lack of communication between the administration and the students, because obviously we just addressed a miscommunication here where I thought one thing and that wasn't actually the case. And I don't think that's any one person's fault, but I feel that there should definitely be better communication, not only with our ability to resolve these, to make sure that we're all on the same page and not demanding things that are already in existence, but also just for the fact that I think, I'm in the engineering school, and within the engineering school, I couldn't tell you if anybody knew about the incident to begin with. And I'm not saying we need to throw confetti every time something terrible happens, but it did feel like there was a very, very large communication gap, so that's what I would like to see addressed. Yes.
I think Maurice and I think we got the notice of that. I think we're probably the first two people around here to get it. And okay, so we got it immediately. And it took me about a nanosecond to think, oh, we got a big problem here, and to start organizing a response. But This is a big university, right? And when I say something, when I make a statement, I speak for 500 and some odd faculty members. And so I want to be sure when I make that statement that I've got those faculty members with me. I'm not just speaking for myself. And so it took me close to a week to get a statement together that everybody was comfortable with. And I'm not apologizing for myself or making excuses. I'm just saying, when you're dealing with an organization this large, the idea that you're going to respond just like that, it doesn't work. I mean, and I think we came out with a good statement. I think we came out with a powerful statement. We wrote letters to the editor. We went all over the place. But it took a little while to put it together. What? You're referring to the faculty. I'm referring to the faculty. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying it just, I heard people telling me that I should do it faster and faster and faster. But we were really, really, really working at it to get it done as quickly as we did. And so I mean, I think the idea that there's going to be an instantaneous response, that's why we have conversations like this, so that we build up the conversation, and you can understand, and we understand.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I don't mean that I was upset with the amount of time anything took and like the responses and things that came out. I mean, I had problems with some of them, but that's not really what I'm trying to say. I just mean that last semester we had that presidential forum, and then there was another like event over at the Wolstein Center, and I don't remember how far apart those were, but I mean from one to the next, there was a pretty decent stretch of time, and it wasn't communicated to me that what I was talking about had been addressed. And then from that conversation we had until now, I still wasn't sure what exactly had been done, what we were trying to do to address this. So it's not so much the speed, I just mean the actual information once it's available being conveyed to the people who are interested, on both the faculty and staff and within the student body.
That's a great, great point, and you're absolutely correct. And I hope that we are attempting to address that, because your concern is very valid, and I recognize that. With BERT, that's a part of BERT's also response to the communication piece around that, right? And having these instantaneous communications to say, we're addressing this, stay tuned, and then follow-up communication, this is what we plan to do. And so that's the whole point of BERT, to say, how are we going to improve the communication to the campus community so they can know exactly what steps are being taken and what is the next play. So it's very valid what you're bringing up, and we have been exploring that, and I'm pretty sure as they've written that down, we're going to continue to dive into that and come back to you with some proposals out in addition to BERT on how we're going to strengthen that communication and make sure that all of our stakeholders are aware of what's taking place, okay? But that was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think this young lady here has a comment.
Thank you. So I was a CSU student before, and now I'm now staff. And at some point when I was a student, I went to a sustained dialogue training, and that was pretty awesome. And nothing was ever done after that. But the purpose of it was to have these like focus groups of conversations around diversity and just any disagreements that people may have to come together in a productive place. And so take the dialogue to action, but in a positive way. And I wish I would have been able to see that take place back then, and I wish it would happen now. And this is something that I brought up to my supervisors too before. Yeah.
So how do I capture that into a bullet?
So I guess that's related to training in a way. So it could be just spaces for dialogue. So just like we're having it now. So just safe spaces for conversations. I don't know how else I would put it right.
First of all, sustained dialogue. I want to put that up there because that was a takeaway.
Yes,
and you want to have the problem that you said that you discovered was that there was nothing that happened after that, right? So a continuation of the sustained dialogues and to follow through on that, right? We can't have these one-offs, one and done, because that's not sustaining it, right? And so we need to continue it. So what you're looking for is a program that's put in place that says this will be a continuation, and we're going to build on that and continue to grow it and develop it, right?
Exactly. Okay. And if there's training for faculty and staff, as they come in, or students, for that to continue, that if there's new faculty and staff, they're connected to someone or some organization on campus that promotes that sense of, you know, diversity and inclusion over time, not just a one-time thing. But I don't know how to put that in one.
I was going to take off of that and a couple of comments that were made earlier. I would love to see a dynamic group created led by students, but comprised of faculty and staff that are trained to do these kind of things, similar to the hype team that is in place for health educators, similar to the peer educators that are in career services. So literally a group that's pre-trained on conflict resolution, group communication, those types of things that the BERT team could then work with when there is a critical incident to say, how do we get the word out? Does it mean we need to go to engineering and have a conversation? Does it mean we need to have a series of conversations every afternoon so that we have an attempt to meet every conceivable student group? So just engage in that kind of group empowerment, if you will.
In addition to sustained dialogue, my thought is in undergrad in psychology, which was one of my bachelor's degree work, there was a multicultural course that was basically taught. Now I'm in MPA, and in urban there is also a diversity course. And within both of those courses, the professor basically set ground rules that each and every subject that's being discussed, that we will basically keep our biases to ourselves, but basically express exactly what we need to express within each and every one of those topics. And I think if each and every one of the colleges on campus would incorporate a multicultural or diversity course within that college, it would basically go along with not just training, but it would integrate the fact that we're all human, we all have personal biases, but there's time when those personal biases need to take a back seat.
Very well said, yeah. I think at Cleveland State, we always, you know, are like, oh, we're such a diverse campus. Like, that's something we can always say we're proud of, but sometimes, you know, in the midst of it all, as students, we're like, okay, but academics comes first right now, and we don't really prioritize in the moment. I think that's kind of what it seems like we were in the middle of in October. We just didn't know how to respond because we hadn't had to respond on our diversity before.
So I guess if I had to like classify a certain way in terms of how to like address these kind of issues and like training for the future, I'd say the way we can sort of break it down is almost ways to shift the culture to prevent incidents like that from happening in the future, ways to deal with the situations when they come up, and then I guess sort of a subhead for that is also like, you know, discipline or action investigation type. I guess it's a little bit of a tangent on this, but so I really do like the Viking Creed a lot, and I think having this be something towards more of a cultural shift end is something that needs to be coming like front and center. Like when new students come in here and they get the day planner or they get registration materials, this needs to be like the second page thing that's there. Mm-hmm. And it's something that needs to also be incorporated, I think, into both all the orientations that come through.
I wonder if there's a way to add the creed to all the syllabi, you know, as a part of our cultural shift. And then I agree with a lot of what's been put out, and then I'm also thinking about once all of these things start and then how you sustain and just continue the dialogue is having something that could explore the unity and the diversity where it's not so siloed, so like that there would be some sort of university unity day where all the diverse groups come together and coalesce, and that things aren't parsed out separately, and that could be an annual event to sustain the conversation. And I've also always imagined that Rhodes Tower could have been wrapped in that love is greater. I thought that was a brilliant piece of marketing that I know also had some other things. But it's good, to send a message really broadly, and I love the idea of shifting culture, so those are my 2 cents.
While we started talking about curriculum, I had one thought, but I have to say one thing first. I was reading last night, rereading an article by Patricia O'Collins on intersectionality, and I noticed that she quoted a wonderful article about the need to recognize both the solidarity of sameness as well as the wonders of diversity. And so we do a lot of, we probably underemphasize basic human needs, which are similar to most people in most of our curriculum. But the specific suggestion that I have has to do with our current critical thinking gen ed curriculum. After fall of 16, I started working on a 3 or 4 part lecture on open-mindedness in my class. And this is sort of a quaint term. There wasn't much discourse on open-mindedness in recent decades. It was big in the 10s and 20s and 30s and 40s, and we stopped talking about it. And my students went wild, and I presented at the provost teaching forum definitions that my students had written of open-mindedness. And they begged, please do the lecture earlier in the course now. And so that's what I've been doing. And so my specific suggestion, and I'm thinking of making a proposal to this gentleman right here at the Academic Senate, that we literally revamp our critical thinking gen ed to have it be open-mindedness in critical thinking. Because I think that the open-mindedness thing is a prereq to the critical thinking. And actually, my daughter's done a dissertation in philosophy in which she denies it, but it's really all about how to be open-minded to the other person's point of view, completely open-minded until you're done absorbing it, and then you can trash it. So I mean, on the one hand, it's like I think open-mindedness, and I discovered lots of stuff about my own failure to be open-minded, and the need for more dialogue between what we call the city mice, the country mice, and the town mice. We desperately, between people who have served in uniform and those who haven't served. I mean, there's so much dialogue we need, but I think that the skills and open-mindedness can be taught. And while diversity courses and stuff like that is good, this would also integrate the Viking Creed into our basic fundamental pedagogical process. So just this thought. Thank you.
I don't know your name, and I'd like to talk to you more about this because this is pretty much what I'm kind of, we're all kind of getting to something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. I just was at a church recently listening to Brene Brown and DeRay McKenna, I think, speaking, having a conversation about how to have conversations. And what you're talking about, open-mindedness, I'll throw a different word out there, vulnerability. And how we all deal with our shame and our fears, to break all this stuff down in order to have these conversations. I'm interested in training some people. I would love to be a part of that. And I don't know how to use it, but y'all are bringing up great points. This is what we're doing today, and I'm so excited. So that we can have more discussions that are really vulnerable, because I believe that's the only way we're going to be able to move forward on any of these places that are so polarized.
I call them
Genuine?
You want to be vulnerable here? Is that the word?
I like vulnerable.
Okay. So vulnerable conversation.
Vulnerability? I don't know. It's Yes, it's being brave. It's like you said, sir. I don't. What is Michael? Nice to meet you. I'm Eric. I'm part of I'm one of the GAs for the LGBT Center here, and some of her work and some of the things that I've been learning about, it just requires so much of oneself. And if some of the people can get there and sit through some of the muddy, it's just, I can't even imagine what But I'm interested in doing this, and I'm gonna stop talking now. But I love some of this conversation, and I don't know where this is going for me or for any of us, but I'm excited to be here. So thank you.
I got a question for Boyd. Have we shared this with deans and chairs to distribute the Viking creed so that faculty actually know?
Yeah, so fantastic question. And we have office-sized posters that are available, so they are welcome. I have shared them as broadly as my reach can go, but that
Okay.
doesn't mean I hit all the corners, right? So we have extra copies here. If you would like to take some, share them in your spaces. A number of student organizations have picked them up, a number of departments have picked them up, and that's exactly what they're intended for, so thank you for that.
All right, thanks.
I just had a really quick thing to tack on for the using of a course, like using a multicultural course or requiring something like that, so that way everybody gets the same thing. I'm all for it being required, but like I said, it seems kind of weird to me that Cleveland State would say, we're diverse, and look, we require all of our students to also take this course in diversity, and also they have to pay us for it. So I would just like to make a note that I'm all for requiring something of students, but I don't really want to have to pay money for it. So if it could be something that isn't a credited course, just a required training, that would make a lot of sense to me.
I agree with you, and I got to tell you that there are so many people that do everything we can to keep the cost of education here down as low as we possibly can. What you need to do is talk to your politicians and the people that are in charge of sending money to the university. We can't run this place unless we get some money. So, I mean, I absolutely and totally agree with you. And there's an awful lot of people that are really trying to keep the costs down here, a lot. And the point makes perfect sense. Talk to the people that can do something about it.
I guess so. My background, so I didn't do my undergrad here. I did my undergrad at Cornell University, and one of the things that was required there was we were taking writing seminars, but they weren't like standard English writing seminars. Basically, you could take them in sort of like any kind of background. And I think one way you could sort of like maybe bridge the gap between like the multicultural course and this is have options that are there that deal with this kind of stuff that like fulfill the writing course or requirement, or something that can integrate well within the graduation requirements rather than just necessarily forcing a course there, something that, you know, can substitute for that area. I'm not really too familiar with the undergraduate curriculum, so, and again, that only addresses undergrad incidences rather than ones that may be initiated by faculty, staff, or graduate students. So there's, I think, stuff that needs to get, you know, I think it's a good idea.
I just want to add that it would be good if the students, while they're on campus, to get a feel for multicultural, because when they get out into their work life, it's not going to be one look on in the office or on the campus. So they need to know how to deal with it before they get there, whether it's through training or whether it's through courses that's required or whether it's integrated within the syllabus. But basically, they need to know how to deal with various cultures within any environment that they're included within. That's all I have to say.
Other thoughts? We're gonna keep on doing what we're doing, and I'm confident that we're going to take these incidents and through efforts such as the ones we're making here today, turn Cleveland State into a national leader in this area. You know, people are gonna know Cleveland State for its diversity. We'll keep on keeping on with it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, let me first of all thank everyone for sharing. I mean, I could not be more impressed with the recommendations and that you were willing and vulnerable enough. I like the term vulnerability as well, vulnerable and honest enough to come here and to share your thoughts with us. And let me be very clear about this. We are going to carefully consider each one of these suggestions up here, and we're going to put a plan in place that we want you to be a part of. Again, this is not a one and done. This is ongoing because the work of diversity and inclusion is ongoing. We are always learning and expanding and growing. So I think now what they're going to do is they're going to post these poster boards around the room, and then we'll pass out some stickers for you. What we would like for you to do is identify, I think they get 3 each. So identify your top 3, put a sticker beside them. That's going to help us prioritize what you've prioritized and put that on our list to say how can we begin to possibly implement what you have suggested. Again, thank you so much for your time, attention, and effort, and we look forward to working with you on an ongoing basis. Well, thanks again, okay, everybody?